What's going on, guys? Bel Air here, back with a little bit of a unique video. I've been hearing about all the roster moves that we got going on, and we don't have any live RLCS content right this moment, but what we do have in the meantime is NBA Media Day. So two of my biggest loves kind of coming together here, and I figured it would be fun to do a little bit of an exercise here, which is comparing NBA and RLCS players. Now, I'm sure you'll notice over the course of this exercise that there's no rules. I tried to make some rules at the beginning, but I'm going to contradict myself every single time on these players, so nothing hard and fast here. And if you don't like any of my comparisons, I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I hope you don't take it too personally, and please let me know in the comments below who you would like to see instead here for this fun exercise. So let's go ahead and get things going. And I want to say up top, I'm prouder of some of these than others. And the last caveat I'll give is I was doing this at like 1 in the morning last night, so you know, are some of these going to be a little more accurate than others? We'll see if we kind of get worse as we go along here. And in the background, of course, is something that I'm sure every one of you watching already knows. This is Season 7 Reciprocity against Dignitas. So this is Farah, Shawset, and Fruity against who's on the other side? Astral, Violent Panda, and I feel terrible because I'm forgetting somebody who is just an incredible legacy player, because this was a stack series. But let me not meander too far off here. I'm sure it'll come to me over the course of the video. So first one off the board, Beast Mode and Luka Doncic. Both kind of earlier into their careers, still have a lot of playing and winning ahead of them, and are players who have kind of had things built around them. Both have been excellent since the beginning. Both have won at a high level. Neither have won the final, the final prize, which is a world championship in the course of Beast Mode. But both are primed to be in positions to end up winning it all. There are very few players who you could make an argument as being more talented than the two of them are. Both are best when they are the best player on their team. And yeah, I feel pretty good about that one. Can do it all. Can do it all on the pitch and on the court. All right. TRK and Dame Lillard. I'm not crazy about this one as I'm reading it back, but hear me out. We're loyal and have kind of been with the same team for an incredibly long time. And, just continue to kind of be there, be the main guy, be someone who that fan base, in the case of TRK, that region, have just always been behind and been massive fans and supporters of, is known for being, one of the best scorers that the world has to offer. We saw that over the course of the season 2. And finally, after being loyal to the same squad over a massive part of their careers, they ended up, aligning themselves with an incredible talent. Dame went the way of Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks, and TRK joined up with the Twins, who are a force in and of themselves. What do we think? Garrett G and Kevin Durant? Yes and no. Again, like, all of these aren't going to be like, oh, well, Kevin Durant's better than Garrett G is currently. I get it. They're two different sports, so it's tough to find exact parallels. But will go down as one of the best to ever do it. Fan favorites. And, Garrett has been with the same team for an incredibly long time with NRG. Kevin Durant has changed around a little bit. There's an argument to be made for a player like Rise when it comes to that aspect of kind of, changing around so much. But for Garrett, still a viable option in which a team is building around. We've heard the news that Aqua and Mist from earlier are already out from NRG, so they're rebuilding around Garrett G. But is he kind of past his prime? Like, is it really reasonable to assume that NRG are going to be making a LAN event. I think it's possible, but I don't think it's likely in the same way that despite all the talent that is around Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns, I just don't really see them contending at the end of the day with the talent that they have and kind of the restrictions that they've put on themselves with how they have gone about building their roster. His teammate, former teammate, Aqua, LaMelo Ball. I get it. I get it for both of them. LaMelo, if you are just a casual fan and you're, just turning on your TV and you just so happen to catch, a quarter or two of LaMelo, you're like, oh my God, this guy is unbelievable. Like some of the passing, some of the vision that he has, his ability to create on the ball, it's just unbelievable. And when you take a step back and kind of zoom out, I just don't know if you're ever going to win at an incredibly high level if he is the best player on your team and if you're going to be building around him. And I feel the same way about Aqua, where it's like, I know the stuff that he does on the ball. I've watched the replays. I've seen him time and time again. He's unbelievable as a talent. Some of the shots he hits, some of the shots he even thinks about trying to go for, I wouldn't have even conceived of. He is a rarefied talent with some of the shot making that he brings to the table. But I just don't think that building around Aqua is going to lead to like, a LAN team in the same way that I don't think if LaMelo Ball is kind of the cornerstone of your franchise, you're really going to be moving forward. It's exciting that they're, kind of rebuilding a little bit. They drafted Brandon Miller, who is an exciting young player in the Hornets. Really, really doubt that they're going to be a playoff team this season, but hey, crazier things have happened. And, if Aqua ends up finding himself on some winning roster, that wouldn't be surprising either. But, I put out a tweet about this. All the people who are like, oh my gosh, like, how can you possibly let go of Aqua? I unfortunately can't totally meet you there on that one. Joyo and Jimmy Butler. I made this one a couple years back, and it still sticks with me for one primary reason. Joyo isn't going to be on the number one seeded team at every LAN event that he's ever a part of. But there are a few players that you would rather see on the other side of the pitch in a big moment than Joyo or Jimmy Butler. The Heat are not going to set the world on fire during the regular season. That is totally fine. What they are going to do is be a complete nuisance and headache to play in each and every playoff matchup that they find themselves in. And I think the player that I forgot was Yukio on Dignitas. But, Jimmy Butler and Joyo are both LAN ready, and they can really light you up, and you don't always think about them up until that moment. Exotic and Jalen Brunson both have hopped up leaps and bounds from what we expected from them beforehand. When Jalen Brunson was on the Mavs, it was like, look, really nice guard, but you kind of understood why they moved off of him to try and rebuild around Luka Doncic. It just didn't really seem like he was ever going to be, the second best player that you needed him to be on a championship winning team for Luka. And the same was for Exotic. Like I really liked him when I had first seen him on Simper at that 22 23 21 22 excuse me World Championship. I was like, man, I kind of like this Exotic guy. But the fact that he has now become the MVP at a World Championship is not something that I had in the cards for him initially. Gifted scorer, can totally break you down and make your defense look silly. Do I think that Jalen Brunson is going to be the number one option on a championship winning team? No, I do not. But clearly, what the Knicks are trying to do with their rebuild, picking up Karl Anthony Towns, and trying to retool and make that team really deadly is something that's probably going to pay dividends. Of course, they still just paid OG Anunoby a ton of money. And on the other side, Exotic. Like, I don't think if you're going to have Exotic be your number one option, you're going to contend in Europe. But hey, if he is on your team, you are in a much better spot than you would be otherwise. Tekaz and Alperen Şengün. This is for all the sickos out there. on both sides of the ball. But Tekaz is a player who is still young. He's Spanish. I don't think Shingun's not Spanish. What is he? I don't know offhand. Um, but it's less about the international aspect and more about the fact that from the limited stuff I have seen from Tekaz, I have been blown away. I think I put out a video on him, or at least he was in a video I put out probably during like Major 1 regional qualifiers, maybe Regional 2. And I was very, very impressed by him on the pitch. I feel the same way about Shengun and what he's doing with the Houston Rockets. Just an incredible passer, more athletic than you might think when you kind of see him. A player who will continue to grow and develop and literally continues to grow. I think he's grown like 2 or 3 inches since he was drafted into the NBA, kind of a Jokic light in a lot of aspects of his game. But just a young player who doesn't get as much shine as some of the others around him, who could develop into a pretty excellent player in my perspective. All right, Nas, Tyrese Maxey came on. I was a doubter at the beginning. Like I saw Maxey when he was at Kentucky, and it's like, man, this guy is a hooper. I'm not getting him mixed up, am I? No, he was a Kentucky guard, and you see him and you're like, oh, I kind of like this guy. He's quick, he's speedy. Of course, you're probably going to have defensive issues with him, but you can kind of overcome that. We've seen some situations where you can kind of build around that and be impactful. Um, it's difficult, but it certainly can be done where you can kind of hide your guards. And I felt the same way about Nas, where it's like, oh, I'm surprised that this is the way that M80 are going to go with their third. AJ and Jorius, I was super excited to see what veteran they were going to bring in to kind of round out that roster. They end up going a different direction, and it ends up paying off big time. I don't think anybody really saw the growth that Maxey was going to have, especially as kind of rapid and suddenly as it occurred. It kind of seemed like he was a nice player, and then all of a sudden, he was kind of this like, oh my gosh, Maxey might be a bit of a cornerstone here for what the Sixers are going to do going forward, which was just huge for him. And we're still waiting to see who Nass is going to sign with this offseason. I believe he's going to be participating in Flip and Spin with Oli and Jorius, if I'm not mistaken. So a young player who's going to be very exciting to watch for seasons to come. Ruas Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. He's one of the best in the world. I have no doubts about it. We just haven't seen him win it all yet. It's really that simple. Nobody would have thought that Shea was going to be what Shea has become, which is probably the first or second best guard in the NBA, depending on how you kind of think other players are positionally, like Luka Doncic and stuff like that. But when he was on the Clippers, nobody thought that he was going to become what he has been, even though he was good. And I felt the same about Ruas, where it was like, oh, cool, they're twins. That's exciting. We see them on roll one. Like, they're really, really, really good. But are they really going to be able to contend with the top, especially when you have Mawson as your third? And they're so young. But now we have seen what Falcons were able to do this season with a new situation. I am almost positive that both of them are going to lift a trophy at some point in their career. It's just a matter of time. They're both still so young. Monkey Moon and Jokic, wow, Belair, really creative on that one. Look, it's sometimes it can be flashy, but sometimes it's just the simple stuff that breaks you down. Jokic being able to find the man down the field, being able to just overwhelm you with his strength in the paint and just drop one in for a bucket in a big situation where you need it. He is just one of one as a talent. If you were to totally black out all the names and whatnot on an RLCS match and it was for Monkey Moon, you could tell by the way he takes off, the way he takes his shots, how he uses his air roll and things like that is very different and more straightforward than what a lot of other of his RLCS peers are doing. And if you were to just totally silhouette Jokic, you would probably know within 4 seconds who the player was. Best player in the world by many accounts, has proven time and time again, whether it be multiple world championships or multiple MVPs, that they are nearly undisputed as the best of their era in some form or fashion. Banana Head and Lowry Markkinen, super good player, but they're sitting in a situation where a lot of people aren't as exposed to them as you would like. Banana Head with power and OCE, not a ton of exposure for those boys over there, but still, that is an incredibly good team that we saw Banana Head really blossom this season into his own. Where on the Pioneers he was exciting in the same way that Markkinen when he was part of my Chicago Bulls, where it was like, oh, I kind of like this guy, but he's not really going to be kind of any true piece. And then as they kind of develop into their career, as Markkinen gets traded to the Jazz, it's like, oh my goodness, this guy's probably an all-star. And Banana Head just lit it up at the World Championship, and has kind of come into his own as one of the best in that region. So somebody who doesn't get a ton of exposure is probably more valuable to the team that he's on than to some of the others, although there's been a lot of bidding wars around Markkinen over the last couple of seasons. We'll see if the Jazz ever actually let him go to contend with a team. And there's also some what I think is unfounded static around Banana Head possibly doing a cross-region switch. I haven't heard anything tactile about that move actually happening. Let me go ahead and pause and get the second game on the screen here as our little background, and we'll keep rolling. Evo and Anthony Simons, both players who are exciting and can do just some unbelievable stuff on the ball. And let me actually slow this gameplay behind us down here a little bit. Let's go to 50%. Can do some absolutely unbelievable stuff on the ball. If you were to just watch, kind of a highlight reel of those players, you would think that they were some of the best offensive players in their respective leagues. But both have had a career that hasn't really put them on a team that has really truly allowed them to succeed yet. Of course, Evo was a part of a LAN attending team with Dignitas. What was that, last season? Yeah, it was. And that is definitely something to be admired. I think Anthony Simons, he made one playoff appearance as well back when Dame was there. That sounds about right, although I could be wrong. But both are still young, still exciting, had a lot of buzz coming into their respective leagues, but so far have been unable to kind of show anything that would make them top players in their respective rights. But both are in situations to continue to grow. I think Simon's athleticism and also his shooting ability. I think he's one of the few guards that shoots at volume who's over 40% from the 3-point line. I could be wrong, but he seems like he's probably pretty close to a 50-40-90 guy. And Evo, is still young and is still kind of a raw talent in some respects. He's about to be looking for a new roster again, as I understand it. So maybe this next stop for Evo is going to be the one where he really breaks out of his shell and shows us what he has to offer. Alpha 54 and Anthony Davis, both have been around the block for a little while here. Both have a specific skill that makes them elite in their own right on different sides of the ball. Alpha last season especially kind of showed us, and historically as well, but showed us that he was one of the best strikers that the RLCS had to offer. And everybody knows the Brow's ability on the defensive end. Nobody really calls him the Brow anymore, do they? It's either AAD or just his real name, but I think he's still rocking the Brow. I don't think he's ever going to get rid of it. Were pretty dominant early in their careers. Alpha is definitely more so with his winning ways and the teams that he was on. Anthony Davis kind of just rotted in New Orleans for quite a while, was never really able to find a winning roster. Although, do you remember how exciting it was when they picked up DeMarcus Cousins and it was like, oh man, Boogie's on this roster. They're going to be so dominant. You got two bigs who one of them is excellent offensively and one is just a complete juggernaut on defense. And then I think Boogie ended up getting injured, so that kind of got derailed. But late into their careers, they find themselves with an unbelievable player, and they end up winning a championship, both in kind of weird ways. where AD and the Lakers, of course with LeBron, won the NBA bubble championship, which kind of had an asterisk next to it. And then for Alpha last season with Vitality, they actually had missed one of the main events early in the season, and then they draft Zen and just go on an absolute tear and win everything and hoist the trophy. So both kind of a weird way to win a title late into your career, but still both are absolutely elite in their own respects. Five Up and Paolo Banchero. Both are players who are young and exciting and can do a lot of stuff. I don't necessarily think about either of them when I'm like, who are the best players in their own regions, or in their own conference or whatever. But both have me very, very intrigued. Like every time I'm thinking about like what a roster would need, if you were just to like put Paulo Banchero on basically any roster in the NBA, and you're like, oh, I think he could be impactful for them. I kind of feel the same about Five Up when I'm doing these like fake potential trades in my head of like what players in North America could be like. LJ and First Killer need a third who's like young, but also is like pretty mechanically sound, and has continued to improve. It's like, well, Five Up could be in that conversation. I don't know if he's going to be the direction that they end up going, but both players that are young and I'm excited about and probably higher on than your average NBA fan. Magic Bear and Darius Garland. I get it. I get that both can score. I think both of them have personalities that I'm a fan of. It's just a matter of whether or not they can show up in big moments. I think Garland kind of had a little bit of a different situation. Didn't he like break his face last season? Am I remembering that correctly? He had some gnarly injury. I think he like broke his jaw or something wild, and he was playing in a mask, if I recall correctly. Maybe that was a season ago. But for Magic Bear, it's just we've seen him get to land a couple of times, and he's kind of one of those players where the way I see it, the best spot for him and where they could be championship caliber players is surrounded by other players who can kind of be the primary option. I think if Magic Bear, like think about Magic Bear in the I don't know, like the Radosin spot. It's kind of a weird one, but what here? Let me think of something different. Think about Magic Bear with an Atomics spot. Let's say that, like him as like a hey, all we need you to do is pick your spots and kind of go when you have the opportunity to, and just kind of facilitate as needed. Like that's perfect. And for Garland, great shooter, excellent passer, great in transition, quick, speedy guard who can kind of break you down and beat you off the dribble. But I don't want Darius Garland to be the best player on my team if I'm trying to win a championship. Reynolds and CJ McCollum, late into their careers, but hey, a lot of people are just like, look at this old head, like he's toast, he's cooked. CJ McCollum will give you 30 on any given night. Dude's a bucket, and he is a consummate veteran. I still remember when he was picked up by the Pelicans, and they had kind of asked like, hey, this is random, I don't know why I remember this, but like, hey, have you talked to Zion yet? And he was like, no, I haven't reached out to, or I haven't spoken with him yet. Like he hasn't reached out to me. Where other players would be like, oh yeah, like excited to play with him. He kind of like, this is a bad retelling, but he like held him accountable right away. And I feel the same way about Reynolds, where it's like, man, if I gotta have like an RLCS foxhole, I want Reynolds to be in mine. I like him in big moments. I think he's a clutch player. I think he's a great leader, infectious personality, all things that I think both of those guys share. And even though they're old and have been around the block a while, both of them are still certainly players who could be championship caliber. Radosin, Kristaps Porzingis can be a critical part of a championship winning team, and it's just a matter of health. In the same way that Radosin is kind of like, he has these series or even these events where it's like, oh man, like what kind of Radosin are we going to get? If KP can stay healthy, he's probably the best, six man, quote unquote, in the league. Both had a little bit of success on the rosters before, where they found themselves currently. It kind of took a little while. KP, of course, drafted by the Knicks. Radosin, early in his career, was a part of Williams Resolve. I think with Prime and Sazin. I don't know if it was Prime, but I think it was. And, it was like, ooh, showed some flashes. This could be interesting. But then once they find themselves onto their current rosters, it just unlocks them and allows them to show the best version of themselves. It's all just a matter of health and ability on the day. LJ and Donovan Mitchell, undeniably one of the best raw scorers in their own respective disciplines. But I'm going to need more from both of them. I don't think either are just a straight up, all around championship winning player. If you just like let's compare it to like LeBron James. Like Donovan Mitchell is shorter. I think he's more of a liability defensively, and even though he can score like gangbusters, there's just like levels to this. I feel similar about a player like Devin Booker, who honestly might be a pretty decent equivalent for LJ as well. Although I think LJ is probably a little bit better defensively than both of these guys. But it's one of those things where it's like Donovan Mitchell is a excellent player, probably top 20 in the league, but there's just levels to this, and I think the distance between him and some of the truly elite guys like the Zins of the world, just as a one-off example, is a pretty insurmountable gap, at least in the way that I view those players currently. Yan, Joel Embiid. Nobody's going to argue with the talent. Nobody's going to say, you'll watch some of these Embiid games where he'll just like easily go for 40, and it just looks like he's the best player in the world. And then you find yourself in these big playoff moments, and he historically has faded, whether it be things he can control or not, injuries, or just fading in big moments. Everybody knows that Yan is one of the most talented players that we have in the RLCS today. It's just a matter of whether or not he can, really show up in these huge moments. And in some of these majors from this season, I felt like Yen was not always the best player on his team. They both have talent around them. Both are probably on the best rosters they've ever had. At one point, both were MVP candidates. All right, what about Yan's teammate lost? DeJounte Murray? Is that a good one? That feels fair to me. From this, in the sense that like I like both of those players a ton. I think that what they bring, their skill set, is unique enough to make them all-star caliber. But I think that both of them are best served as not the best player on their team. When they have been the best player on their team, they look legit, but it's not quite enough to get them over that hump. Like when Dejounte Murray was a Spur, and it was like, ooh, Dejounte. Or even now with the Hawks, it's like, oh man, him and Trae Young, like what a duo. This roster's so deep. I really like them. But at the end of the day, I think he can be one of the best for both of them. I think that they can be some of the best like ancillary players to a superstar, and definitely could be a part of a title winning or deep playoff run effort. I like both of them on both sides of the ball, but a little bit inconsistent isn't the right word, but just not at the same quality with the same bag as some of their peers to really separate them from the pack. Fiber and Kobe White, both those players were was like, I'm a Bulls fan, so when we got Kobe from the he was a Tar Heel, and when he came in, it was like, oh man, this guy, he's so fast, he's so explosive, like we need a new guard, this kind of 2.0 version of Derrick Rose, although we knew he probably wouldn't be as good as Rose was, who just retired, which is a whole other thing. But as things kind of started to go along, it was like, okay, like they're just fine rotational players, and that's okay if that's all they end up being. Fiber, of course, this season was benched by the Pioneers for Major 2 regionals. And it kind of seemed like, all right, well, what we thought that Fiber could be at one point in time, he's probably never going to reach that point. And then out of nowhere, late into their careers. I think this was season 5 for Kobe White. He just explodes offensively. And there was like a 3 week period where I think Kobe White was like leading the league in points per game. It was just ridiculous. And the same thing happened with Fiber, where he came back, and there was a couple series there in that World Championship where I watched, and I was just like, I think Fiber is the best player on the pitch in some of these games, which was just wild. Andy and Malcolm Brogdon, I like both players a ton. I think what they do is high quality, they're high caliber. They're obviously never going to be the best player in the world, but they can be a leader on and off the pitch and are great for kind of fostering the young talent around them. Even though Andy is definitely younger and closer in age to his peers than Malcolm Brogdon is, who I think Malcolm Brogdon is like 65 years old, but now he's a part, I think he's still on the Trailblazers unless he got traded. And, he's just one of those guys who's good to have in the locker room. Like if I had, a not an unlimited budget, and it was like, look, we're gonna get these young players. I want you to surround them with players who are going to make them better, keep them competitive, be good teammates. Andy and Malcolm Brogdon would both be on my short list. Chronic and Trey Young, both exciting players, both kind of highly drafted, even though there's not a draft in the RLCS, but picked up by uh, Nolly and Jack to kind of get into a big situation right away, similar to how Trey Young was drafted, what, third overall? Remember, he was going to go to the Mavericks, but then Atlanta actually traded up to take him over Luka Doncic, which was wild at the time, and of course is wild looking back. Excellent shooters, can be liabilities on the defensive end, and I think that they both could use kind of a new situation to show us what they got. Trey Young has kind of overstayed his welcome in Atlanta, in my opinion. You can keep building around him, but I think he kind of could use a new situation, and Chronic is getting that right. FK's out, Chrome is out. Apparently, Jack is out, probably going back to Europe, and we're gonna see. It's kind of a new era for two players who are legit offensively and have kind of found themselves as not the primary option on teams, or have kind of taken a back seat in the most recent season. Chronic really was the mechanical kind of uh, outbreak player for Gen G that they used to kind of get going in solo plays and see if he could break down the defense. And Trey Young, just as a lob threat, as a passer, and as a people often think about him as like a 3 point shooter just because he's short, when it's actually not the case. He's actually great at driving, creating contact, getting to the free throw line, things of that nature. So both highly quote unquote mechanical in their own rights, definitely have another chapter in both of their careers. First killer is James Harden. He's going to go down as one of the most dominant scorers ever, and that goes for both of them. FK statistically and Harden statistically at one point in time just made your eyes pop out of your skull. They were leading in every category. They were the best offensive players that we had, but neither of them have been able to win it all quite yet. Even though both have been on several rosters where you know they were the number one option with a bullet, and then they were on rosters where they were more of a filler piece around other stars, and in both situations, they kind of go back to their old ways and need to kind of have the ball in their hands all the time. Daniel is Jaylen Brown, one of the best players in the world. I think ultimately they are the best number two possible. We saw Daniel as a number one option, and he was kind of limited. Of course, it was young, early in his career. So if we saw it again, maybe it's a different case. I think that the two of them are two of the most talented, well rounded overall players that their respective sports have to offer. But at the end of the day, like we kind of know who the alpha's the wrong word, who the leader of both teams is, who the number one option for both teams is, and that's Jason Tatum in beast mode. Chicago is Chris Middleton. At one point in time, offensively elite. Now they're later into their careers. Both kind of give you a little bit of pause. Chris Middleton is because of injuries. I think he's had surgeries on both of his knees in the last couple of seasons. And Chicago, it just kind of seemed like he lost, half a step that kind of kept him in the pack from what we saw with him on G2. But yet they both still surprise us. Antetokounmpo, Giannis was out for the playoffs last season, and Middleton looked awesome. There was that 6-game series. I can't remember who it was against, but Middleton looked excellent. He was the primary scoring option, and this World Championship, Chicago really came back into his own and was a big reason why SSG had as good of an event as they did. Two-piece and Mikal Bridges. I really like both of them. The fan bases like both of them. I just don't know if either of them are what they were supposed to be. Like Bridges, it was like, oh man, the Brooklyn Nets, here's your team. You go and do it. And then they were, kind of like a middling, 41-41, 500 record type team. And I feel kind of the same way about Two-Piece, where I watch him and I'm like, man, this guy is good. Super durable for Mikal Bridges. And Two-Piece just kind of does it all. But I just, I really, really like them. I just don't know if they have that thing that will get them over the edge. Time will tell on both. They're both still really young. Oh, Mikal Bridges got added by the Knicks too. I was like, oh man, they went and got Cat. They get OG Anunoby. I completely forgot about Bridges. Parth is Fred VanVleet. Excellent offensive players. I worry about both of them defensively. I think they're both great players to have on your team, but I don't think either one of them makes you a deep playoff kind of team. Itachi is Jamal Murray. Can do everything, is a leader, and I think that Itachi can be, he's one of the most consistent players we have, where like Jamal Murray, he just kind of rises to the occasion in these playoff games and can hit absolutely massive shots. But he's not the best player on his team. And I feel like Itachi has kind of had the luxury of being surrounded by other great players throughout his career, whether it be, Astral or Vatira or, being with Seiko this season. They're both excellent. But, Jokic is kind of the engine, and that's how I feel about Itachi too, where it's like if it's Itachi and insert 2 average players, I don't really know if that team is going to be making lands if you were to compare him against Zen and 2 average players, Monkey Moon and 2 average players, Beast Mode and 2 average players. I think that Itachi's probably a little bit farther down, but he makes the players around him better, and I think Jamal Murray does the same thing. We've seen what he's been able to figure out with the Jokic pick and rolls over the years, what they were able to do with Aaron Gordon as kind of this big player in the dunker spot who's just a lob threat and then can really lock down guys on the defensive end with his length and size. Kind of getting off topic here. 30th and finally, Torsauce's Mike Conley is going to go down as one of the best to ever do it. Mike Conley has had such a long career, all the way back to the grit and grind Memphis Grizzlies, where it was him and Marc Gasol and Tony Allen and Zebo, and now they're very, very late into their careers. Torsauce has seen basically all of his peers retire or leave around him, and here he is as an old man, still getting it done. And Mike Conley is, I think, going into his 17th or 18th season, and he's about to be the starting point guard for a Timberwolves team who are looking to improve on a very, very good season from last year. So there's 30 players for you guys. I don't have any water, so my voice is getting a little dry here. So I just wanted to say thank you guys for your patience. I know we haven't had a video come out in about a week here. I'm going to get back into it. We're going to get videos rolling a lot more commonly, but we took a little bit of time off I'm in Florida, and we had a hurricane come through that kind of, you know, we had to reprioritize some other things. So unfortunately, YouTube fell by the wayside for a couple of days, but we are back. Flip and Spin is going to be going here soon, so we're going to have some RLCS content. And like I said a couple of videos back, I have some really cool ideas of content that I want to make over this off season. So I appreciate each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to watch. I hope you enjoy this content. I'm excited to hear what comparisons you would draw between RLCS and NBA players in the comments below. And as always, guys, until next time, take it easy.